Well, I'm always looking for weird stuff there on Marketplace, and I came across this old radio. It looked pretty tampered with. It didn't have a speaker or an audio output transformer. The back cover was missing. But none of the tubes looked white with that color they get when air gets in. And of course, they don't work anymore, right? The price, 30,000 Argentine pesos. That's about $23. Father's Day was around that time, so, well, I gave it to myself as a gift. I went to pick it up. I've restored a lot of old radios, but none of them were for me to keep. So that day finally came. I have an old radio and old things work, Juan. Don't go anywhere. I'll show you the restoration process in a moment, and some really interesting things that are worth a detective investigation. Caesar space. Yes, as I said, especially to the followers from the city of Cordoba, you might be able to provide information that contributes to the history of this radio. Now I took it to the patio to get some dirt off. The cabinet is in pretty good shape. It's painted. That's always a problem because to restore it, you have to remove all the paint, and that's a lot of work. The dial glass is in very good condition. I like that. It just has a few chips in the paint, but honestly, it's in very good condition. The fabric on the front, well, it's a shame. And those knobs, they're an eyesore. It looks like the previous owner was Pepe, and he made it very clear. He signed the fabric with a pen and wrote on top how much he cared about the radio. Do not take it out of here. Pepe was imprisoned. He must have been in jail, I guess. Well, and there's also the signature. Of course, I'm not going to show it. Inside, a lot of dirt and signs of mistreatment, right? The tubes look fine, but only 3 of them have the name engraved. Usually these tubes came with the name on the glass, but over time, the heat from the valve when it's working wears it off. So, well, we'll have to do a little research to find out what valves they are. The identified ones are the audio one, a 50-53 quarts, 6 the rectifier, a 35-35Z-5, and the Magic Eye, 6 19 feet 8 inches, 5. The radio works with both types of current. At the time it was made, there were many places that still had Edison current. Remember, direct current. We're talking about the 1940s, 1940. And even quite a bit later, there was direct current, and in some places, only alternating current. Well, that's where you get spider webs, and taking out the chassis on the bottom where the components and connections are, well, they look barely touched. It's pretty good. After consulting and reviewing quite a few schematics, I found one that, although it didn't have exactly the same tubes, it had a similar series. Instead of using 12 volts in the filament, which some of the tubes in this radio used, they used 6. But anyway, it helped me a lot, and that way I was able to identify the rest of the tubes. In these cases where we don't know if the device works or not, the first thing to do is try to get the electronics working. If the radio makes any noise, well, we go ahead with restoring the cabinet. If it doesn't work, we have to see if we can get the spare parts to get it running, to get it working. Because of those things that collect junk, I had several old audio transformers, and especially one with a tapped primary that this radio uses. So, well, I also had speakers, and with a 220 to 220 isolation transformer, I powered it up, and, well, with a lot of buzzing, but it started to wake up from its slumber. That was enough for me to start restoring the cabinet. Well, removing the paint was the toughest part. It took me several hours. I spent several days removing all the paint. Then I sanded it and left it in the natural color of the wood. Finally, a few coats of varnish. As always, the fabric for the front was provided by the upholsterer from my town, Jorge Francia, who generously always contributes to the restoration. Thanks a lot, Jorge, my friend. I was also turning the knobs, but among the stuff I found 4 knobs from that era in very good condition, so I liked those and put those knobs on. As I was saying at the beginning, I found something very interesting. It's like something written on the chassis of the radio on the inside with an address and a date. Well, you can see the inscription here. Julio S. Testa, La Madrid Street, 1054, Cordoba. And the date, March 7th, 1946. Surely someone might know who this person is, if they're still alive. I was looking on Google Maps, and it puts it on the outskirts of the city of Cordoba, in Villa Saldan. So if anyone knows the family or the person, please comment and leave some information. I would love to know. I think it must be the person who assembled the radio, who put it together, because on the back of the chassis, the same last name appears as the person who apparently repaired it on May 6, 1950, a few years after it was assembled, 4 years later. Well, now I've also stamped my name on it for posterity, right? Of course. After replacing several electrolytic capacitors and paper capacitors, it's now working both on medium wave and short wave.
Martin met him, or one of our friends. And how did the project start? It started last year, the day that...
Developing an international logistics and supply chain to develop this kind of special economic means to lure in Chinese factories, to lure in Japanese factories.
I had to make some modifications for the speaker because the original must have had a big speaker and, well, I put in the one I had, so I had to make an adaptation for it. I used MDF and made the back cover, which it didn't have. And, well, even here, I managed to get the little lights for the dial. Well, it's a shame about the noise, not so much radio interference, but anyway, with a ground wire you can listen to stations from all over the world, and of course on medium wave those from Argentina and neighboring countries. I treated myself. I have my vintage radio with a magic eye. Well, friends, that's all for now. This wasn't a technical video this time. Not at all. It was more of a narrative. Whenever I do these restorations, I get into it. I get kind of nostalgic and think about my grandfather, who, back in the days when these radios were made, used to repair and build them. If you liked it, please give it a like and share it on your social media. I want to know more about the builder. If you know anything, please don't hesitate to write it in the comments. If you're not subscribed, do it right now by clicking the bell so you get notifications when I upload new content. You can also join. And in that case, I'll add you to a WhatsApp group where the premium members are. Remember that on Tuesdays, I'm doing reviews of tech products, so keep an eye out on Tuesdays too. Thanks for watching. See you next time. God guides me.